Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
We're back, and I'm joined with Reid Zimmerman, an expert on nonprofits. Welcome to Farm Connections, Reid.
Good to be here, Dan.
Well, what makes you an expert on nonprofits anyway?
It's an interesting question. It's partly because I've studied them and I've been involved with nonprofit organizations for the last 35 years. Mostly here in Minnesota, but in a variety of different capacities.
Well, you've had some executive director positions. You've also taught at the college level, correct?
Correct. Graduate school and undergraduate, nonprofit management, everything from governance to fundraising and a variety of different topics.
Well, you know, a lot of our audience is in rural Minnesota. How are nonprofits impacting our communities?
The nonprofit sector is often called the third sector, I like to consider it really as the first sector, because nonprofits really support those facets of our society which are, I believe, of the highest quality of life. They really underpin what we are as a democratic society. They support the arts, welfare, health, human services, education, those things that we have come to know as citizens in a very open and democratic society. Nonprofit organizations aren't coerced into providing these services for us. Volunteers in those organizations do it willingly, and it's really one piece of what makes us as American society unique.
Well, how do we compare to other countries around the world in respect to that?
Well, I'm going to digress here to my academic side for just a moment and bring us back historically to the early 1800s. There was a French historian and sociologist by the name of Alexis de Tocqueville, who came to the U.S. to visit and look at what this burgeoning democracy was doing here that was different from Europe. And he came and he ended up writing a couple of books entitled Democracy in America. But here's a quote. He said, "I must say that I have seen Americans make a great deal of real sacrifices to the public welfare, and have noticed 100 instances in which they hardly ever failed to lend a faithful support to one another." And what Alexis went on to talk about was that in the world at that time, American democracy and the social sector of that, the volunteer sector, created hospitals and prisons and took care of people in a way that was quite unique in the world that he knew. Now, certainly things have changed, but Minnesotans are known nationwide and internationally for the volunteerism that we do, the way that we support the arts, the food shelves, the youth soccer leagues, the things that make our life so rich. So we're proud to live in a state that really supports the sector, does good work, and rural Minnesota is in many ways head and shoulders above other parts of the state and other parts of the country, because it really is more grassroots. People know each other better.
It's fascinating. In a comparison in a worldwide setting, how do we compare in the United States as far as size? What kind of contributions are given?
Well, in the U.S., on an annual basis, we've historically bounced over the top of the $300 billion mark.
It's huge.
It is huge, and I believe a couple of years ago it was over $330 billion. Now, what's interesting is we think as sitting here that, gosh, that's a lot of money, and it must come from the Pew Foundation and the Carnegies and the Kennedys and all of those big philanthropists. And in actuality, 75% of that money comes from individuals. 3/4 of that $300+ billion is generated and given back to society, back to nonprofit organizations, back to other people from individuals. You, me, our families, our grandparents, our children, and that is what I think makes us unique among nations.
It helps define us.
It really does.
Yes. It helps sustain our communities and our families and the way of life that we wish to perpetuate.
Yes, and while a lot of that money goes to churches, to individual congregations and synagogues and mosques, much of that money also from the church comes back into society. So we really are unique and almost extravagant in the way that we support each other in our society and in unique ways that business is really not interested in supporting because there's little profit to be made, and where government doesn't have the legality, the law behind it to support those kinds of things.
Well, let's say somebody in the audience is hearing you, Dr. Zimmerman, and saying, how do I volunteer? What can I do? What opportunities exist?
That's as easy as turning around and walking around the block or looking at downtown in your community. There are certainly sports organizations that kids need coaches to help them. Schools are always looking for mentors to help kids learn to read. The food shelf certainly looks to you as an individual to support them both with food and with money so that they can support those who are in a tough position right now. Everything from arts organizations to hospitals to schools to food shelves to sports organizations, they all need volunteers to help. So find something you're interested in. Check out what it is that you'd like to do and look around.
It doesn't look difficult to find some way to contribute to nonprofits.
No, not at all. There are also statewide organizations, the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, MAP for Nonprofits, Charities Review Council. There's a lot of other organizations that help bolster and support that sector here in our state, and that are all full of ideas and opportunities on how an individual or a small group, be that maybe a Kiwanis group or a chamber, a club or organization, can help drive the sector and support each other.
And helping nonprofits helps our communities and defines who we are.
And it really is about helping somebody else. It's about helping somebody else find a better position, learn something, grow in some way.
Tremendously interesting. Thank you, Dr. Zimmerman.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Happy to be here.